Hackers are targeting a surprising group of people, young public school students.
As it turns out, the identity information of children is actually more valuable to them than that of adults.
Doug Levin, he is director of the K-12 Security Information Exchange, a nonprofit that helps protect school districts from cybersecurity risks. And he is busy these days because cyber attacks against school systems are on the rise. Kavitha Cardoza reports on what is at stake for students and their families when their school districts are attacked by cyber criminals.
When Celeste Gravatt first heard about a data breach in her kid's school system last year, it sounded innocuous.
I didn't really think anything of it at first.
Officials at Minneapolis Public Schools called it a system incident, then technical difficulties, and an encryption event. It was only when Gravatt checked social media that she realized the true extent of the cyber attack and what it could mean for her kids.
And then it was like, okay, well, this breach was actually really huge. And it wasn't just like school records. It was health records. It was all sorts of things that are, should be privileged information that are now just out there floating around for anybody to buy.
Minneapolis had been hit by one of the most devastating school cyber attacks ever. Hackers gained access to the files of more than 100,000 people, including files where children were identifiable. The data, which the hackers released online, included information about sexual assaults, psychiatric holds, and school security maps. Gravatt says she felt violated.
There was an extreme breach of privacy.
Minneapolis Public Schools confirmed the details of the incident, but declined to speak to NPR for this story.
I think there's a misconception that what schools have are just Johnny and Susie's algebra grades.
Doug Levin, the cybersecurity expert, says it's so much more. Over the past few years, as school systems depend more on technology, hackers have increasingly targeted them for their sensitive data. Data they can use to steal a child's identity, or which they threaten to release if officials don't pay ransoms.
It is affecting people not just currently in school, but who used to go to school or used to work in a school system.
In 2022, 45 districts reported they were attacked. Last year, that number more than doubled. That's according to the cybersecurity firm NCSoft. Districts have data on everything from a child's medications and discipline records to household income and court orders.
School systems educators can be a little bit like pack rats. And so there's a lot of information that is collected over time, and it's often not deleted when it's no longer necessary.
Stealing a child's identity may seem counterintuitive because they don't have resources of their own.
But their identities can be stolen to create a lot of havoc.
They can open bank accounts, rack up debt, apply for loans.
And as a result, cyber criminals can abuse the credit records of minors for many, many years before the victims learn about it.
Black and brown students are especially vulnerable when a school system gets hacked. In Minnesota,
Black students are 8 times more likely than a white student to be suspended.
That's Marika Pfefferkorn, an advocate in Minneapolis.
So that also means that more of their information is being input into the system.
She co-founded the Twin Cities Innovation Alliance to educate parents about the misuse of data. Pfefferkorn says the more information collected on a student, whether it's about discipline, special education, or free lunch, the more vulnerable they are after a data breach.
And I think about all the different domains where Black and brown people, whether it's housing, healthcare, all of these things, it actually shows up in the school district and what information they're collecting.
Pfefferkorn says communities of color are overrepresented. And while the immediate concern about identity theft is bad enough, there are also the long-term implications if the stolen data resurfaces years later. Say a student has a history of drug use that's been successfully overcome, or disciplinary records that should have been expunged but are now publicly available.
It might be when you're applying for college scholarships,
or job interviews, or a court hearing.
Even having information on suspensions might mean that a young person might receive a harsher sentence.
And then there are students whose sexual assault records have been released.
There have been stories about these students being doxxed or their peers actually posting information about them and bullying them.
Levin, the cybersecurity expert, says some information can be devastating if it's made public.
Given how polarized the public is today about issues like gender identity, maybe even pregnancy or immigration status, if some of that information became public for specific individuals at specific points in time, it could be absolutely life-threatening.
It felt really, really overwhelming.
Rachel Flannery has 2 young children whose data was stolen in the Minneapolis cyber attack. She received the district's guidance, which included free credit monitoring services and instructions for credit freezes and fraud alerts. But she says it's unrealistic to think parents have the time or capacity to do all that.
Freeze this, do this, send a copy of your birth certificate and social security number here, call this number. If you fill out this form, you'll get so many months of free credit monitoring. Blah, blah, blah.
In the end, she did nothing.
I tried to just kind of be an ostrich about it, right? I put my head back in the sand, and I kind of was on the mindset of, well, if anyone knocks on my door and tells me my 7-year-old just bought a boat, I'll show him where he is, and hopefully it won't be hard to get the charges reversed.
The family has since moved, but Flannery says the whole experience was scary. As a parent, she's always been concerned about her children's physical safety. Now, cyber safety is another thing to worry about.
I'm not what I would call a tech-savvy person.
Parent Celeste Gravatt is also worried. She has 2 children who have graduated from Minneapolis public schools and another who's currently in the 7th grade. Gravatt locked her kids' credit so no one could open accounts in their names. She's especially concerned about one of her kids' health information being made public. She still feels anxious when she thinks about it.
So I do wonder if somebody were to obtain any information that they shouldn't have, would I even know till it was too late? I don't know.
Advocates say the biggest fallout from cyber attacks is that communities become even more wary of their schools at a time that trust is needed more than ever. For NPR News, I'm Kavita Cardoza.